Welcome everyone to an NCAA social series. I'm Andy Katz, pleased to be joined by Dr. Brian Hainline, our Chief Medical Officer from the NCAA, Dr. Terry Rauch, and Dr. Paul Pasquina. They are both members of the U.S. Department of Defense research team, among many other accolades in their day jobs, helping all of us be safer, obviously, in the military. So those that are in the military. So obviously, want to deep dive into the topic that is very critical here on the eve of the Army-Navy game, which is the Defense Concussion Assessment. The NCAA and the U.S. Department of Defense are working together. It's called the CARE Consortium. And I want to get everyone's opinion first before we dive deeper into it. What is this for those that have not heard of it? Brian, we'll start with you.
Well, thanks, Andy, and it's really great to be with you, Terry and Paul. Can't get enough of our meetings together. So, basically, this started off with meetings in 2013, and there was a really incredible meeting in December 2013, which led to the idea that the NCAA and Department of Defense could come together and work on the issues of concussion, which is a form of a mild traumatic brain injury, and also head impact exposure. And the idea was that if you looked at the mild traumatic brain injuries from our military servicemen and women, especially Iraq and Afghanistan, that the majority of those mild traumatic brain injuries happened in a way biomechanically similar to a sport-related concussion. In other words, it wasn't a blast injury, even though those certainly occurred. And so and when you look at our servicemen and women, our collegiate athletes from a demographics point of view, there are a lot of similarities. They're athletic, they're intelligent, they're goal-seeking, and really push themselves to the edge of excellence. And from a sport point of view and from a military point of view, we really didn't understand concussion that well. We didn't know the natural history of concussion. There were no objective biomarkers for concussion. There were so many unanswered questions, and so we just thought it was a phenomenal opportunity to work in a partnership, and that has happened. And now flash forward with the concussion assessment and research and education program. We're now going into our 8th year, and we have the opportunity to extend this really for many years to come. And so it's been a privilege, it's been a pleasure, and it's been eye-opening because we've discovered so much. And the NCAA is really grateful for the ability to work with the Department of Defense with Health Affairs, and it's a partnership that means the world to us, but I think also to society.
All right, so that's a good baseline. And Dr. Rauch and Dr. Pasquina, I want to go back to the military side that Brian just brought up. I think we obviously in the public space and the sports world, we hear so much about concussions, especially on the football field. But from a military perspective, how did the development of understanding concussions develop over time, especially in this last 20-year period with Iraq and Afghanistan?
Well, I'll start that off, and then I think Paul can probably add a bit more technical content. So with respect to head injury within the military, not only do we think about, the deployed force, such as Afghanistan and Iraq, but a lot of our head injuries occur in garrison, in training. When I say in garrison, here in the United States, as an example, and going through various types of training. And also, pick-up sports and things like that is where head injuries will occur. I like to think that over the last 8 years, as Brian had said, the CARE Consortium and the principal investigators and the research activities have significantly contributed to the understanding that we have in the whole science of brain injury, and the factors that promote recovery from injury, and actually factors that promote prevention of injury. I'll pause there and let Paul add some content.
Sure, no, I'd be very happy to. So, being a part of this program, this consortium, this study is really meaningful to me, both personally and professionally. I think we talked before we started filming, but behind me, I think you can see my West Point diploma. And I have to give a shout out for my Army team. But, as a former member of the, Army football team, I sustained, several concussions myself, as did many of my classmates before me and after me. And now on the medical side of things, since 9/11, talking about 20 years of seeing casualties here through Walter Reed and through the Uniformed Services University, I've had, I guess, the privilege, but also the responsibility of taking care of numerous service members that have sustained blast-related brain injuries as well as impact-related brain injuries. And quite frankly, distinguishing the two of those is very difficult because many of the service members that sustain a brain injury or a blast-related event, also struck their head on something or played contact sports or non-contact sports, as Dr. Rauch was just saying, during training sustained some type of concussion. And so being able to partner between the Department of Defense and the NCAA to really, really better understand concussion, the symptoms presented by concussion, the natural course of recovery after concussion, and to start really looking into more detail of the biological and the physiological effects of concussion has been really exciting. And I will just add that in addition to these great organizations, obviously the DoD and the NCAA working together, through this CARE consortium, we've brought 30 other academic institutions, together. So universities across the United States, including the 4 service academies, all out recruiting athletes from every different sport, whether they're a contact sport, non-contact sport, male, female athletes, and really, really trying to understand concussion so much better. And why? On the DoD side is because we really care about the health of our young men and women that are wearing the uniform and defending this nation. And on the NCAA side, they really do care about the health and welfare of their athletes, not just for the short term while they're at the university, but for their long term as well.
So I want to get to that in a moment, but one of the narrative that I'd love to hear from all 3 of you, because I do think there's a real strong similarity between the military, and I can't speak obviously from experience, I did not serve, but in the athletic field. But I think Dr. Pasquina, I want to start with you, and then if Dr. Rauch and Dr. Hainline can add on, because you have a unique experience because you both played a quarterback position or a position on the field, obviously with Army, and now are in the medical field. But that attitude of tough it out, would you get your bell rung? You're fine. Get back out there, get back out on the field, get back out to whatever your duty is, your training, you're okay. At what point did that change over the last 20 years where, no, it's not okay to get right back out there, even if you get your bell rung? Dr. Pasquina?
No, I really appreciate that. And that's probably, if we had one single message, that would be the primary message, that, everybody recovers at a different rate. And what we've learned is this traditional, oh, you'll get better in 5 days or 1 week or 2 weeks. Those are arbitrary numbers. And what we've discovered with this highly, highly motivated group of athletes, cadets, midshipmen that are absolutely going to return as soon as possible. Only about 80%, well, I would say on a positive side, about 80% will be better within, 2 to 3 weeks. But the flip side of that is 20% will have persistent symptoms. So this idea of it's been a week and you're not better, what's wrong with you, has been a real paradigm shift in the care of individuals with brain injury. And we do hope, while we have 30 institutions across the NCAA partnering and working on this study, the knowledge gained through this study is hopefully feeding out to all other universities, including, club sports, high school sports, peewee sports, and across all different athletic events and non-athletic events, because that's a really important message to get out there. Because then the athlete or the individual starts thinking something's wrong with me, as opposed to, no, this is the normal course of recovery for some people.
Well, I'll say that one of the highlights, I think, of the potential of our CARE consortium is the longitudinal aspect of this, because what we have to realize and what we're trying to understand is that head injuries that occur at a certain point of time may have a consequence later on in life and may place individuals at risk for certain types of neurodegenerative disorders. These are things that we need to understand. When we put service members in harm's way, whether it be training or deployment, and they suffer injuries, such as head injuries and repeated head injuries over the course of the time they serve, we need to understand how that may affect them later on in life, even if they're off active duty and become a part of the VA system. We still have an obligation to understand any harm or any consequence of serving and later effects on their health and lifestyles. So I'll pause there and turn it over to Brian.
Well, thanks, Terry. And going back to your question, Andy and Paul, how you were discussing this. So when I was in medical school, even during my neurology residency, our neurology textbooks essentially treated concussion as an inconsequential issue, and it was the same way it was often being managed across the sports world and even in society. Well, yeah, you did have your bell rung, but there wasn't this appreciation that maybe it's something beyond that. And I think by really analyzing the length of time it takes someone not only to recover from a symptom point of view, but what's really interesting about the CARE study is that there are 6 sites that are doing highly advanced research. So in brain imaging and blood biomarkers, genetic markers, genotype markers. And we're starting to define not just symptomatic recovery, but biological recovery or physiological, as Paul had said earlier. And so as we gather that information and we're able to talk about it across the spectrum, for males and females, we have very little data on female concussions prior to the study. And across all 24 sports, we are understanding, as Paul said, that individuality of recovery, respecting that. And just by doing the study and getting that information, we've actually changed the perceived norms of concussion safety, that there is much more of an awareness of that, of a respect for that, and allowing every individual to recover at a manner that makes sense for him or her.
One anecdote I want to point out that I was thrilled to hear about a week or so ago. Jaime Jaquez from UCLA smacked his head during a game, and he was actually cleared to go back into the second half. But in the post-game news conference, UCLA head coach Mick Cronin said he wasn't deemed to have a concussion, but any kind of head injury, you don't know till maybe hours later if something could be wrong. So he did not put him back in the game in the second half. And it was a game against Colorado. Now, he did not have a concussion. He's fine. But I thought that was great by a head coach to take a step back and say, no. I don't know what's going to happen here with a potential head injury. I'm going to pause and not rush him back in, even if he's been approved to go in. I hope more coaches react like that. So I want to also dive deeper into the actual CARE consortium here. The 6-month natural history and neurobiology of acute concussion and head impact exposure, HIE. We love acronyms here. What were the key findings from this phase? Paul, if you want to take it.
Yeah, sure. It's kind of hard to, in a short segment of time, talk about all the details of the findings. But I think the first is, just really understanding this natural history of concussion, understanding that, up to 20% of folks that sustain a concussion may have symptoms beyond 28 days. And I think that that is really eye-opening for a lot of the folks based on what we just got through talking about. The other thing that we notice is that early recognition of a concussion and early getting out of the sport can actually get you back to play sooner. So recovery is actually enhanced by early recognition, detection, and early treatment. In addition to that, we've learned things such as early initiation of return to aerobic conditioning is actually beneficial. So the idea of, after having a brain injury, going into this dark closet and not doing anything or not, stimulating the brain is actually negative, as opposed to, even while somebody still may be having some symptoms, they can start a gradual return to exercise. A lot of athletic trainers and sports medicine physicians were doing that early. The military has now adapted that into policy and is pushing that information out. And I guess, just to summarize all of these findings and go back to what you were saying, in addition to informing coaches, which I know Dr. Hainline has done a ton of work informing leadership throughout the NCAA, including coaches, we've done a similar thing in terms of educating our squad leaders, our company commanders, our brigade commanders, our squadron commanders. And the fortunate thing about working with the service academies is, by every cadet or midshipman being involved in this concussion study, makes them aware of the importance of recognizing concussion in the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines that they will lead in the future. So we really think it has a stronger impact than just the science.
So where I was going to jump in, I'm glad I didn't, because I was just curious, Dr. Rauch, if you can just piggyback off of that I do think there's a lot of unknown on the recovery aspect. You have an ACL, we know what you're going to do to get that knee better. Certain orthopedic things,
Sure,
we fully grasp. What are the sort of the basics of recovering from a concussion, both for the military and for an athlete?
Yeah. So, one of the things that I think about a lot with regard to the CARE Consortium and the research opportunities as we continue to proceed through the consortium program of work, and some of the things that we're already finding out, for example, is concerning sleep. We know that with concussion, some individuals have sleep difficulty. We're just now understanding, when I say now, over the last 5 to 10 years, we're just now understanding the importance of sleep and the ability of, during sleep, sort of cleansing our brain. When we sleep, it triggers some things that we call in the lymphatic system, in which we basically take the garbage out at night. And all of the metabolic activity that occurs during our waking day, during sleep, that presents the opportunity for the brain, through the lymphatic system, to kind of cleanse itself. Now, we know that with certain types of brain injury, it may impede that ability. So imagine, not taking the garbage out of your kitchen for a week or a month. Not a very satisfactory or healthy environment. So we're just now starting to understand the importance of head injury and sleep hygiene to certain brain function, and the importance of sleep in all of that. And
let's go off to the next, now the $42.6 million award to launch the next phase. What does that mean?
Well, I'll start from our point of view, but I think Paul can really elaborate on this. So, CARE, as Paul said, it's 30 schools, and one thing that's really interesting for the 30 schools it's all of the NCAA athletes, but at the service academies, it's every cadet, even those that are not NCAA athletes. And so then there became this unique opportunity to follow the service academy cadets long-term, and from a military specific point of view, even utilizing their military records, which is very different than the NCAA student athletes who could go off in hundreds of different directions. And so, you know, to look at care and follow these athletes out long-term, and then the service academy cadets, something called SALTOS, so the Service Academy Longitudinal Traumatic Brain Injury Outcome Study. They really are done in parallel now. So we have these two groups, but they're interdigitating along the way. And so we have the 6-month study, and then we have the 2 to 4 year study. And now we can go beyond to 10 years and hopefully even 15, 20 years and really understand for the first time in history, long-term, what really is happening. So this is an incredibly exciting for everyone and was recently announced.
You know, one topic I just want to put a bow on this conversation, which I think is obviously incredibly important for everyone, regardless of what you do. How do you think this study and what we're discussing here will affect the manner in which sports are played? And I'm just also interested to sort of put a bow on this, on the way it's conducted in the training aspect for the academies. Let's just go around our room, and Brian, I'll give you the last word. So we'll go Dr. Rauch, Dr. Pasquina, and then you, Dr. Hainline.
First, we in the Department of Defense are very, very proud of the relationship that we have with the NCAA and with the CARE Consortium. I want to build on this and leverage off of CARE, which is all about what we've been talking about for the last 30 minutes, head injury and recovery and prevention. But there are so many other things that we can do with the NCAA and through mechanisms such as the CARE Consortium to look at, you know, lifestyles and performance, diet and nutrition, sleep hygiene. And these are things that we're concerned about in military life, and also the NCAA is concerned about in the lifestyle of students. We share these, and I think there's just a tremendous opportunity for us to partner again to help solve some of these other problems. And I'll pause there.
Yeah, so back over to me. I guess I can't close without thanking my partners and co-principal investigators, Dr. McAllister, Dr. McCrae, Dr. Prolio from Indiana University, University of Michigan, and Medical College of Wisconsin. Just amazing, individuals, professionals, and scientists that are, leaders in the field of concussion and brain injury research, as well as all, obviously, the professional staff at the NCAA sites, at the military academy sites that are taking care of our men and women that are having injuries. So from the medics that are overseas, the corpsmen that are on ships that are saving lives, it's just such an honor to kind of represent them. So I appreciate the opportunity to just say that. There's a lot we still don't know about brain injury. This partnership is definitely helping us understand a lot more. There's a lot of concern, obviously, over the long-term impact or long-term potential negative effects of concussion and repetitive head impact exposure. We just don't know. And how do we balance the positive aspects of sport participation, which are well documented, with the potential negative aspects of concussion, repeated concussion, or repetitive head impact exposure? Understanding that causal relationship and maybe being able to detect earlier those individuals that might be at a higher risk for long-term problems is really what we're at here. And so we hope, with this additional funding, we'll be able to look at those intermediate and longer term effects of concussion.
You know, for Dr. Rauch, the idea of collaborating along other lines, I mean, it would be ideal, I think, for the NCAA to have the honor of partnering with the Department of Defense, and I think it you know, it ends up being a benefit for society, and that's what's really gratifying about it. You know, just one concrete example, Andy, of how policy can be changed. There was a paper published from the CARE Consortium that had to do with the football preseason practice, and it looked at various things that happen in the preseason, and especially like repetitive head impacts and concussion, and it actually, that paper was published, and within a very short period of time, working with the Football Oversight Committee and the division governance structure, they put in place a change in how the preseason is conducted. You know, repetitive head impact, it's a relatively recent term, and we still don't understand exactly what that means, but as we're getting more insight into it, we can start changing you know, the practice schedule and what we're doing, so that it might make more sense based on the data that are starting to come out. So it's always side by side. You know, it's not that every paper leads to a policy change, because you need to understand, well, what's the prevailing consensus and what does this really mean? But sometimes there's a paper that is just so striking that you make a policy change, and that was an example in the spring paper that looked at preseason football. So last word, finally, echo the sentiments of thanking not only our 4 principal investigators, but all the investigators, boots on the ground, and again, really gratifying to work with the Department of Defense, our member schools, and to have the support to do so.
What's great about this discussion is it once again shows all the tremendous work, research that is done behind the scenes, in this instance with the NCAA and the Department of Defense, that a lot of the general public and even those in the membership really don't grasp how important this topic and others like it are. So really appreciate, obviously, the time that you have given to us and what you're doing that we're not seeing in the public space. Dr. Terry Rauch, Dr. Paul Pasquina from the Department of Defense research team, and everything that you're doing just on a daily basis in your day jobs. And of course, Dr. Brian Hainline, the NCAA Chief Medical Officer. Thank you to all of you. Stay safe as hopefully everyone else is. And as everyone out there, as always, you can check out our social series at ncaa.org/social series, because all of them are archived right there. Thanks for watching, everyone.